All right, let's talk about pricing. And I don't just mean slapping a number on something. We're going to dive into the strategy behind it. Because, pricing isn't just math. It's a game. And if you play it right, it's honestly the most powerful tool you have for growth. But if you get it wrong, well, you're just leaving cash on the table.
So it all boils down to this one simple question, right? How much should this cost? But the answer is anything but simple. It's not just a number. It's this incredible mix of psychology, your marketing plan, and, the hard financial facts. It's really the moment of truth for any business.
You can think of every single pricing decision like a giant tug of war. On one side of the rope, you've got your costs. That's the absolute rock bottom price you can charge just to keep the lights on. And on the other side, that's your customer's idea of value, the absolute most they're willing to pay. And that sweet spot, the perfect price, is found somewhere in the middle of all that tension.
Okay, so let's start with that foundation, right? Let's talk about the floor. This is your absolute price floor. It's the bare minimum you can possibly charge, and it's all about your costs. Pretty straightforward. If you dip below this line for too long, your business just isn't going to make it.
So, to really get a grip on costs, the airline example is perfect. Think about it. That giant airplane, that's a fixed cost. They've got to pay for that thing whether it's jam-packed with people or totally empty. But the little bags of peanuts and the drinks for each passenger, that's a variable cost. It only shows up when someone actually buys a ticket. And getting that mix between fixed and variable costs right, well, that's absolutely crucial for a smart pricing strategy.
So that begs the question, right? If your costs are the floor, why on earth would you ever price below it? Well, there are actually a few strategic reasons. Maybe you take a short-term hit just to survive a tough economic patch, or to snag a massive order that'll pay off later. Or you get really aggressive to grab a bigger slice of the market. This often plays into something called the experience curve. It's this cool idea that the more you make something, the better and cheaper you get at making it. So that low price eventually becomes profitable.
All right, we've nailed down the floor. Now let's look up, way up, to the ceiling. And here's the thing. The ceiling isn't some number you calculate on a spreadsheet. No, it's a feeling. It lives entirely inside your customer's head. It's the absolute maximum price they'll pay, and it's all based on how valuable they think your product is.
A lot of companies, and you can't really blame them, take the easy way out. It's called cost-plus pricing. They just, they figure out all their costs, add a standard little markup for profit, and they're done. It's simple, it feels safe, but man, it could be leaving a ton of money on the table.
Now, the smarter way, the more strategic way, is what we call value-based pricing. And this just flips the whole thing on its head. Instead of starting with your costs, you start with your customer. You ask, what problem am I solving for them? And what is that solution actually worth to them? When you price based on their perceived value instead of your own spreadsheet, whoa, the potential for profit can be absolutely massive.
And this really taps into a huge piece of human psychology. See, your price is never just a number. It's a signal. It screams quality. It screams confidence. This quote says it all, right? If you don't value your own product enough to price it highly, you're basically telling your customer not to value it either. And why would they?
Okay, so we've basically defined the playing field, right? We've got the cost floor at our feet and the value ceiling way up high. Now let's look at the factors inside your own company that help you decide exactly where to put your price. This is all about your own internal game plan.
A great price doesn't just appear out of thin air. It's really the last piece of a big puzzle. First, you have to know your core objective. Are you just trying to survive? Are you aiming for total market domination? That goal then shapes your marketing strategy. Are you the fancy, luxury option or the go-to for good deal? It's only after you've figured all that out that you can land on a price that actually makes sense with the whole story.
And really, what it all boils down to is this: consistency. Your price has to tell the exact same story as the rest of your marketing. It just has to. I mean, if you're trying to be a super premium airline for corporate travelers, you can't slap a bargain basement price tag on your tickets. It just creates this weird confusion and totally undermines everything you're trying to say. Your price has to back up your brand's promise, not fight against it.
All right, so we've looked inside the company. Now let's zoom out a bit. Because your pricing decision isn't happening in some isolated bubble, right? You're out there in a really dynamic market, and it is full of these powerful outside forces that you absolutely have to pay attention to.
And the type of market you're in, it completely changes the rules of the game. Are you in what they call pure competition? Think of a farmer's market. Everyone's selling tomatoes, and the price is pretty much the price. You have zero control. Or are you in an oligopoly with just a few huge competitors where every single move you make is like a high-stakes chess match?
How much freedom you have to set your own price. It all comes down to this.
And believe me, it doesn't stop there. Of course, you've got to keep an eye on your competitors and what they're charging, but you also have to think about the economy as a whole. What about the stores that sell your product? They need to make a profit too. And what about the government? Are there any rules or regulations that box you in? It's like this complex web of things you have to juggle.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that there's no such thing as a perfect set-it-and-forget-it price. It just doesn't exist. Pricing is a constant balancing act. You are always tweaking your position between your own costs and what the customer thinks it's worth, all while trying to deal with the crazy, shifting winds of the marketplace.
Which brings us to one last question. A big one. Now that you know the rules of the game, the floor, the ceiling, your own game plan, and all those outside pressures, I want you to think about your own situation. Is your price just some number you came up with? Or is it the powerful strategic tool that it's supposed to be? Really ask yourself, are you charging what you're truly worth?